Hey guys, Thor here again. On devlog number 2 here today, we're going to talk about a few different things. We'll cover the campaign, look at some basic features and functionality that's already working. We're going to look at the map editor system that I've built. And we're going to look at a few of the implementations on the battle map that have been added since the last devlog. I am re-recording this devlog. I had a cold for the last one, so the audio quality was a little bad. I was a little hoarse. So we're going to, in the spirit of perfectionism, get all this information out there for you guys. Okay? All right, let's get started. Okay, you can see here, this is all placeholder. I have a basic menu loading system. Loaded all the game assets at runtime, very important. Makes things a little bit easier moving forward. Let me just quickly here change our audio settings. In normal indie game spirit, the menu music is way too loud, of course. Now, let's get straight into it, all right? Start a new campaign. You can see we've got our options here. Martian invaders and human resistance with a difficulty slider. Now, just a quick disclaimer with the difficulty in this game. It's not going to impact things like unit AI. It's going to mostly be statistics based. So, you know, you'll take more damage, you'll have less health, stuff like that, rather than actually changing the behavior of the AI. Okay, here's the strategic map. And you can see our hexes here. These are just placeholder. These represent different districts. And of course, in the game, there will be a fully 3D map of England. And each of these sectors here will be a physical territory of that map. You can see here we have, when we click on these hexes, information come up on the screen about them. Tells you who controls them, the concentration of red weed, and the total population. The population, of course, is your blood resource. Those two things correlate. And you can see we've got a time system up here with a clock. If I speed up time, now we're accumulating our blood into our resource reserves. So we calculate copper, blood, and metals. Blood recalculates every hour. Metals recalculate every 24 hours to sort of simulate the way that these resources are extracted, right? With metals, you need to refine them, smelt them, things like that. They won't be immediately available, but blood, you're just siphoning out of humans. So that's going to have a steady trickle that you can use. Now, these resource reserves, you can increase your capacity by building different buildings in sectors you own for all of these resources. Let's look at our research tab. This is pretty basic and placeholder at the moment, but you can see we have full functionality and you can see the vision for how the research will work. You'll be able to select research, you'll be able to scale your research capacity by increasing your research points per hour by building more buildings or controlling sectors that have certain assets within them, certain human assets that you are able to study. Right now, our reinforcements and design menus are actually pretty much the same. In the final, or soon at least, these will not be exactly the same, but for now they are. And what this is, as the name implies, you can call reinforcements from Mars. And this will be very important in the early game because you cannot build new units while you are initially landed, before you have built supply chains and factories to build tripod parts and then assemble them, which takes time and a lot of resources. Before you have any of that up and running, you have to call more pods from Mars. And you can see how we do that in this screen. You can choose your chassis, you get information about it, its base stats and cost. You can then choose what weapons you want that chassis to arrive with. You can choose its abilities as well in the same manner. And of course, you have maximum slots for all of these things that are chassis dependent. And there will also be a mass system, so you can If you don't want a fighting machine, let's say you want a handling machine and another logistics unit, and they're smaller and more lightweight, you could maybe call 2 units instead of 1. So once you call these units into a battle, into a sector, a battle will start. And this really depends on whether you own the sector or not, what happens next. Because you can see down here we have the option to pick any sector on the screen. And this will carry over to the final game. This is in placeholder, so you'll be able to actually attack enemy sectors with your reinforcement drop, which will kind of provide that experience that you see in the Wells novel of the pods landing and having to defend your landing site against waves of civilians and then enemies while you're building your fighting machine that you've called in. So it'll take a little bit of time to actually assemble your machine, and during that time you'll have to manage the defense of your landing site. And then you'll have the opportunity to push out with your machine and take the territory. So this sort of opens up some interesting asymmetrical options in the early game where you don't have to worry about committing your tripods that are maybe busy defending sectors. You can order a drop in and take some sectors without losing your defensive garrisons. Okay, and you can see down here we can also enter build mode per sector. We'll look at that at a different time. Okay, I'm going to close real fast and I'm going to restart just to refresh all of our cached data. And next we're going to look at the editor. Now this is pretty exciting for me. When I was growing up and playing real-time strategy games, the first thing that I did anytime that I installed an RTS was go into the game folder and look for that editor.exe. And I know I'm not the only one that did this. I know many of us really enjoyed that aspect of RTSs. And this is something that you don't really see in RTSs anymore, which is sad. I think the last really great RTS editor was in World of Conflict. If anyone remembers that title, that was an amazing game. But it also had a really good editor with a lot of features to build your own cinematics and things like that. So in the spirit of that, we have a map editor. Now obviously take all of the features that are here with a grain of salt. I have a lot of things built in. Some of them are placeholder, some of them absolutely do work. And of course my intention is to have everything functional. You can see we can open maps. We have a file browser system for loading and saving our maps. We have a few different options. Let me go ahead and pull up the object inspector. We'll need that later. And you can see our scene is empty right now. What we do here to get a terrain in here is I would, in the Godot editor, using the Terrain 3D plugin editor tools, sculpt my terrain, apply textures and all that, put holes on, logic for instancing, like trees and grass, anything like that. And then all of that I save into the file system and then I open it in the editor here. But because we don't have any terrains ready to go, what I'm going to do here is select my Create Placeholder Terrain option. This gives me the option to just place a basic plane on the map, and this has terrain code attached to it. It has all the terrain functionality that you need. So this is basically just a test environment now, which is another nice thing to have in your in-game map editor, is having all your mechanics running in real time so you can do some testing, which is helpful for me, probably more than it will be for you once you have got the copy, once you've got the game in your hands. See, all of this stuff works. And we've got some tools here, and we'll talk about all of these. First, let's see, what will we start with? Well, you can see we've got some things here. And let's quickly get a unit so we can place our tripod. Or can we? Yep, there we go. Okay. And if I place a target, he'll attack it. So again, you can see our mechanics are working, our AI is working, And eventually we'll have a little option in here also to control these guys. Now, the way the prefab system works in the editor is these are basically logic items that you can place in the game, and they're modular, and a lot of them are actually procedural. I'll show you that here. You can see in our inspector this building ruin asset, which is, pretty crude at the moment. It's all placeholder. And, something like this may not make it in the final game, but this is more showing you guys the functionality and building up the procedural systems that drive something like this. So the procedural systems can be applied to other things, and you'll see that I've already done that in a few instances with other objects. But you can see we've got things like window holes, the debris amount, so the debris around this structure, you can change that. Provides cover, blocks line of sight, is enterable, all those things. It has a health pool, it has a custom seed, which is for things like texture or generating children bodies. It'll add variation, so all of your instances are not exactly the same. And I think you get the idea of how that works. Let's look at another one of these modular instances. Here's a barricade wall. Now what can you do with this? Well, of course you can move it around, you can rotate it. Oh, and let me also point out, you can of course rotate things on placement too, which makes things more expedient. And you can see as I scroll down here how I'm talking about these procedural values. And of course, you can change all of these to change the height and whatnot. And these objects are actually recognized by the AI as cover objects, and the AI will try to get behind them if they're being attacked. And we'll talk a little bit about that later when we look at the AI system. Let's look at another one of these modular assets. You've got a watchtower, which has a sight range that it adds to the map. And units like this will be very important for the human defenders who need to cover a large area and have constant line of sight to alert their units of enemy incursions. And I believe all the scaling logic on this is actually working. So let's go ahead and show you what that looks like, and we'll test it. And you can see we can put people in these towers. We actually have an entry point that they can climb. This is a ladder here. So we can actually make infantry units get in this tower to extend their sight radius. Here we go. So tower height is 15 right now. Let's pump that up to 20. And you can see it didn't de-instance the old one, but if you were to save this map and then load it, it would not have this old asset here. It's just a simple cache clearing issue. But you can see it works. So the idea is you'll have this implementation for all of these objects where you can scale them and make them very slightly different, and also add some randomization that runs at map runtime. So all of these assets might be very slightly different, which of course makes sense for combat fortifications, right? I mean, no trench looks exactly the same. We have other logic assets here, like our victory points. We've got our tree clusters, which we'll talk about this a little bit later, but you can see our behavior here with these tree clusters, right? They are modular, they scale their children, and of course all of this will be important for the cover system and the line of sight system, because units can hide in trees, and each of these tree volumes acts as an occlusion volume. So if you have a unit in here, they will have a modifier added to their visibility stat. So my tripod here, if you've got an enemy unit inside, it'll be harder for him to see that unit. But if you start destroying these trees, if these trees, because they are actually individual instances with their own physics, if you start destroying the trees, the total rating, the visibility rating of these blocks lowers. So if there's only a few trees left, your unit will have to leave or he'll be spotted. So this gives you sort of a scorched earth option with certain weapons like flamethrowers, where you can go around and destroy forests And then in the future, when you come into the battle map again for a different battle, all of the trees will be missing and the humans will not have the opportunity to use that as cover. We'll look at this in a moment in the battle map as well, exactly how this works. Looking at our other logic items, well, we have a cinematic camera system that allows you to build cinematic camera movements and things like that. You have the basis of our civilian logic. So you've got our civilian spawn points and the map waypoints. And these work in conjunction to allow civilians to move around the map and also to give the combat AI of the humans priority objectives in relation to the civilians. So they will use the existence of these markers to drive their AI. And let's look at our tools real fast. We've got a couple things that are mostly working. We've got our damage test tool. And what this does is it gives us the option of using any of the weapon assets in the game to test on units here. It also has some placeholder assets like these projectile utility and effects settings. It gives you the option to spawn these projectiles at a certain height. Let's look at one of these. I'm going to zoom in because the projectiles are pretty small. Let me see. There you go. And you can see down here in our debug, there's no effects attached to this projectile, but we do have explosions, we do have a radius and all this, so we can test our units and our damage physics all in the editor using this tool, which is pretty handy and pretty cool. I like this a lot. Next, we'll look at the road network tool. Now, I talked a little bit in the last devlog about how roads and things like that will be usable. They'll provide modifiers to movement. And you can see we've got a few different kinds here. They'll each have their own associated effects and visual appearance. And spline mode is not completely working yet, but this gives you the idea that we'll be able to build curved road networks with intersections and things like that. And here's our example road. And you can see if we change to a paved road, well, it's going to give us a different texture, which is a little broken, but you get the idea. And you can see we have these endpoint nodes here. And it will tell you here, it gives a 1.5 times speed modifier. And this modifier only applies to wheeled vehicles. This is actually configurable. If I want it to apply to other things, I can make that happen too. And to see all of that, let's go into our object inspector. And you can see we've got a lot of exportable settings here. We've got all our settings for the splines to set how the curves look and their distance between curve nodes. You can see we've got some visual things like lane markings. We've got road condition, which tells us if the road has taken damage, right? So this is another option to create choke points. You can attack roads with a manual attack order or with a projectile or something like that. And you can degrade the roads, which makes them unusable or even provide a movement penalty to human units, making them less of an option than just crossing regular ground, which is interesting, I think. You got things like weather degradation as well. So in certain weather settings, you'll be able to change the stats of these roads. So if it's an asphalt road, maybe during raining, you don't actually want to use it, and it will provide the opposite effect of the expected if you have wheeled units. You can see we have decorations here, things like lampposts, sidewalks, guardrails, things like retaining walls. All of that will be modular and spawnable on the roadside automatically. Okay, let's close out of that. And also built into this road system, we have some validation tools. So you can see our show network, road network statistics gives us information on the road network we have on this map. It tells us we have 2 segments at a total length with an average segment length. And this is very important for us if we're looking for roads that might be disconnected, because if you If you're doing things correctly, you should only have one road segment because it should be a continuous network across the whole map. We can go to validate and we can say, well, it will tell us if our road segments are working, if we have any segments that are not connected to the network. And of course, things like our snap all endpoints and our endpoint snapping does not work right now. But of course, just in due time. We can also go up here and go to setup map. And this is what allows us to make the map exportable and allow us to run it in the skirmish mode and even in the campaign. You can see it will automatically add the physics volumes, the water boundaries, sun scripts and objects, spawn areas, and objectives. And speaking of spawn areas, if you want to add your own spawn area for each side, the human and the Martian side, you can do that. And that will specify exactly where units enter the battlefield. So as you can see, we've got a lot of functionality in the editor, which will make things a lot easier and faster for both for me, and it will make things more enjoyable for you. Okay, let's go ahead and restart again, clear all those errors out. Now let's look at the skirmish functionality. You can see here we have the option to bring any number of units that we'd like into this skirmish. We'll have the option to add enemy forces as well. You can equip each of them with weapons and abilities. All of that will be in the equipment tab. And of course, the number of weapons you can add is contingent on the number of weapon slots. Each of the tripod tests have 2. And we can pick our map, weather, time of day, civilian density, all that good stuff. Currently, we don't have any maps ready to go for skirmish mode, so let's just enter our test scene. Okay, now right off the bat, let's point out a few things we see here. On our mini-map, which is new, we have a mini-map now, we have some alerts popping up. And this is obviously going to ping us whenever we have like contact with enemies, enemy attacking us, or we are attacking enemies. You can also see we have a fog of war. This is very early days fog of war, but it works. And the fog of war compounds with the visibility system. You can see that we have these enemy or these human units here moving in a formation. And we can't actually see them. All we see is this debug mesh volume. And the reason for this is because there is a visibility system that works on a few different factors. The factors are optics of the unit that is looking, right? So our tripod here has a certain optic score that determines how easily it can detect things. The units that are being detected have a size score. So the tripods have a very large size score, obviously, and then human units have a small size score. And the smaller your size score is, the harder you are to detect. And the detection system is also driven by what the units are doing. So a unit attacking, a unit moving is easier to detect than one that's standing still. And as I mentioned before, things like trees, cover, will provide a hard bonus to your detectability to make you harder to see. And you can see we have on our mini-map enemy units marked, which is actually the reason that we can see these units on our mini-map. Okay, now we can see this target here. But the reason we could see these on the mini-map before we could see them with our line of sight is because right now the mini-map is driven by the fog of war. So anything in our fog of war is visible. And these systems just aren't fully integrated yet, right, with each other. So you can see this human unit has been decimated while I've been yapping here. And we've got all our wrecks here. These will eventually despawn, but you can see the models slightly changed when they were destroyed, and it added a little bit of randomness to their placement. So these will all be vehicle wrecks with smoke and destruction effects and whatnot. Now let's walk our tripod through our trees here and check out what happens. Well, look at that. You can knock over trees. And they have physics. Let's see if we can actually hit some. Well, maybe not. There we go. Excuse me. Still getting over that cold. Sorry, guys. What else? Yeah, we've got these order buttons down here, which have a few different functions we can show off. Basic attack order, and what this does is, you can see I gave the attack order, he moves towards the attack order, and the moment he has a target, he stops. He lost the target visual for a moment there, so he stopped firing, and now he's moving forward again. So very, very useful if you have units that are trying to hide from you and you want to continue moving without having to micromanage your unit, right? Have a force attack, which allows you to attack a ground position. And you'll notice the move order that was standing is actually still being processed by him, so when these orders end, he will just continue on his merry way. Let's go ahead and give a stop order. And this reverts to his default behavior, which because he has attack automatically on, he's going to attack that orb until it's destroyed. And it is now destroyed. Let's look at our rotate.